Y'all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the CPS website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Policy. Anyone speaking tonight during our public input portion of this meeting is notified the superintendent's office of the desire to speak and has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of this meeting will also be read and made part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. So, welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. Our first order of business is to approve our minutes from October 1st.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the minutes of our meeting from October 1st.
I'll second.
Okay, any corrections? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nice transition.
Sorry.
All right, next up, we'll hear from our Chelmsford High School student representative.
All right, so with Halloween coming up, the senior class is going to be having their Halloween dance on November 1st at the high school. The class of 2027 will be hosting a movie night showing the 1998 Beetlejuice at the Performing Arts Center. This will be on October 19th from 6 to 8. There'll also be candy, snacks, and raffles. The boys cross-country team just had another great showing at one of their meets, this time at the Manhattan Invitational. They came in second for all school varsity, with runner Xavier May taking first place overall, and Marco Lombardo taking fourth. Additionally, in the sophomore race, Anthony Mogren came in ninth place. On October 17th, there will be 8th grade parent night, and on October 28th, there will be a half day. And last week, the varsity football team beat Lowell 32-14, and this week, they're moving on to a tougher team of Tewksbury on Friday.
Nice. Great, thank you.
Wow.
And our other student rep is playing field hockey tonight.
She's
so
a field hockey game.
Okay, so
Yep, so she's at field hockey.
we'll see her in a couple weeks, yep. All right, any good news to share?
I'm amazed that the good news wasn't taken away from the student rep, so I'm so excited. So last week, our French exchange students came. There's 11 of them. They came and they're going to be with Chelmsford High till, what's today, Tuesday? Till tomorrow. Till Friday. We had a welcome dinner for them. When I say we, our new world language coordinator put together a nice welcome dinner for the families, the host families, the students, and the administration, and all the teachers that wanted to show up at the establishment. It was great. Dr. Lang and I were able to join them, and it's just it's a great experience for everybody. We had a couple of parents come up to us, tell us like they were so happy to be able to have this experience, and the kids are having a blast so far at Chelmsford High.
So they're from France?
Yes.
Oh, great. And this will be our exchanges this year?
It will be our exchange this year, a little different because we had a scheduling snafu on the France side, but we've come up with a French experience that's going to be happening in the spring for the students that are hosting families, right, or hosting students now.
And we, Maria, I think we're alternating now. So one year we're having French, then the
Yes.
next year will be Spanish, then French, then Spanish. We're not doing two at the same time anymore.
Okay.
Yep.
That's great.
Great.
Wonderful.
All right, any other good news? No, okay. All right, we'll move on. We don't have anybody for public comment.
We don't,
we'll move on
so
to
we'll
new
jump right
business.
into the agenda. So we're going to continue our discussion tonight on capital planning and prioritization for next year's submission. But wanted to take a minute after speaking with Dennis, because at the end of the summer, we'd gone out to actually look at some of the projects that weren't quite completed. But I want to just recap for you a couple of the things that we have been since completed, just with some pictures so that we didn't actually have to drive out to the schools to see them. But one of the projects we accomplished over the course of the summer was the new gymnasium floor at Parker Middle School. So the old floor was taken up, and this is a new poured floor at Parker. That gym gets a lot of use, obviously during the school day, but also for rentals after hours. We have CYBL basketball and a wrestling program, so they're really excited about their new space, and it's really came out nice, it did. Over at McCarthy, we talked about the new kind of secure entryway to the school. Part of this, so it's about 80% complete. The secure entry piece is complete, and actually everything was located there today. They're going to open it tomorrow, so that'll be nice. If you're looking head-on up the cement ramp, we had to install a new cement ramp so everything was actually the same level coming out of the school. And the doors head-on are going to be replaced over the next couple of weekends. We've just got to find 2 or 3 good days, but it is a little bit louder work, so we need to do it over a weekend. So we've just got to look at a forecast. The company did let us know that the product came in last week. So we just need to do some scheduling on that. But the storefront windows, doors and windows are going to be replaced. But on the left, as you look at the picture, that's the new kind of secure entryway to the school. So when you walk up the ramp, you take a little bit of a left, you push the button like you want to come into the school, and then there's an individual sitting in the reception area there to help screen individuals as they come into the building. There's a little check-in system. That's the new universal screening system that we have for visitor management at each of the schools. I tried it today myself. It worked fine. So you just put your ID, it runs it through, gives you a little printed decal. But this should really be a nice addition to the school to be able to kind of control who's coming and going from the space. Excuse me. And then that's, like I said, we finished outfitting it today with the individual's equipment. So tomorrow morning is when we're going to launch that officially. So still waiting for a day for the new doors to go out in the front, but we're opening this even though the doors aren't in yet.
So tomorrow is the first official day.
Tomorrow's the first official day. We've been kind of fooling around with it internally, making sure all the different things work and function the way we want it to. But tomorrow will be the first day that after the kids come in to start the day, anyone after that will be channeling through here. So we'll give it a go and report back to you how that goes. We're excited. Over at Chelmsford High School, we actually accomplished a lot there as well. This is a picture. I don't know that we actually got to see it too good because when we went there, it was nighttime. But in the back of the building, we have 6 brand-new tennis courts. So those were put in and painted and lined, as you can see. That's front-facing when you're in the parking lot. And then on the back side, we have 3 basketball courts that are brand-new. They're actually in the process of being painted this week. The tennis courts are made out of a post-tension concrete, so it's a different product than the back. The back is a more regular asphalt hot top. So that went down after the fact, and you have to give the asphalt a little bit of time for the oils to rise out of it before you can apply the paint surface. So that has been done, and at this point, they're going to start painting that. And then the back right corner here is where the pickleball courts are going to go. So they actually started painting that as well today. So by the end of the week, you'll have the 6 tennis courts, the 6 pickleball courts, and then the 3 basketball courts.
Can I make one comment?
Sure.
I really love the black painted fences.
Yeah,
Continue
that's
doing
the,
that. Yeah, if
Yeah.
we can, just stay away from the gray. This is like your tile offset thing with me. Is I think that
the twisted turn.
these fences look better, they last longer, and they really, chain link fence without the covering. So I'm really glad to see
Yeah,
that.
this has like a plastic coating
Yes,
on the chain link.
yes,
It's,
100%,
it does
yeah.
look good. It does.
Does the high school have
I'm middle
pickleball?
age now.
No, so
This is community?
it's community, even the basketball in the back is community, and the tennis courts are for community use outside of school hours. The high school obviously has a tennis team, boys and girls, that play in the springtime. It's a spring sport at the high school level. And originally, pickleball was going to be incorporated into the concept at McCarthy, which we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But as we were working on this particular project, we decided to move pickleball to the high school and the street hockey, which was going to, street hockey was going to be at the high school, over to McCarthy for a couple of reasons. One, there's actually there's a far better chance, and it's a likely chance, that pickleball will get picked up as a high school sport over the next couple of years. So to actually have the pickleball courts be located at the high school is advantageous. The other thing is you do still have a little bit of noise with pickleball. You have the clicking that some people don't like. So out in the back of the high school, no one's going to hear it. So that's also a positive as opposed to being right beside McCarthy and next to the police department. And also to move the street hockey over to McCarthy, the middle school kids really are more apt to play street hockey than the high school kids are. So it actually worked on multiple fronts. So this is all going to be buttoned up, like I said, this week. The only thing, just to set community expectations, all the painting and things will be done. The poles will be put in the grounds, but we're not going to put the nets up until the spring, because by the time we put the nets up, we'd be taking them down for the weather and things like that. So the tennis and the pickleball will not be operational until the spring season. Our high school team will kick it off in the spring when they open up for spring sports, and that's when the nets will go up. But the spaces will be done, other than that.
You'll
So
be making the opening serve.
I may be one of the first people up there to play, you never know. Yeah. We'll see. But no, it's really, I'm happy this project was done. As you remember, we'll also be having a dedication ceremony in the springtime for Al Thomas, because we had dedicated this facility to, in Al's name. So we'll be inviting Al and his family to a dedication ceremony for this space. The committee voted to do that. So this will be in his honor. Also at the high school, again, we had a busy summer. The other major project we had over there was, well, one of the two, the complete renovation of the 5 art classrooms at the school. So the hallway on the left is the new hallway that was actually constructed. We never had a wall down the left. It was an open concept classroom, which was very difficult to use. So the 5 rooms were completely outfitted with new flooring, new ceiling tiles, lighting, again, this wall. The kiln is on the right. We reconfigured the door space so that the kiln can actually be directly accessed through the art classroom, as opposed to having to go in through the TV studio, which was just a unique way that you used to access the space. And then the 3 primary teaching spaces for the art room were all renovated as well. So new floors, new furnishings, desks, student chairs, the whole deal. The art staff are very happy with how this all came out. This is the room that actually has the spinning for the pottery. That's why you see the power poles coming down from the ceiling, and the teachers are very happy with this space. So the art rooms came out great. As you'll see, we'll talk a little bit later on planning for next year. We'd originally submitted the art classrooms as a project for last year's town capital, and unfortunately, it didn't get funded. But we put it on our prioritization list in the springtime when the school committee receives recommended projects, and we funded the first portion of it. So we funded the, basically the physical build-out of the space. The only thing we didn't fund that we have to come back to is in the 2 classrooms that house the graphic arts, there are 2 computer classrooms. We also had a line item to have new student furniture in those rooms and new technology. So the physical build-out's done. It's not going to be as hard, obviously, to put new desks in and new technology. Bill Silver's working on that for us. But that would be kind of the second and final phase of this work. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And the last major project at the high school, which opened about 2 weeks ago, was the new kitchen. So I know when we walked through, I believe it was just an open space. They hadn't really even started adding the power of the ceiling grids yet. So that's been in effect for about 2 weeks now. All new layout, all new design in the kitchen. We see a lot of the kitchen staff are really happy with the space. We can ask Patrick after. The student feedback so far has been very positive as well. We're still obviously kind of working through the logistics of the different lines and who to go where for different options. But you can see they're actually cooking up, quite a menu at the school now with some really good options for students. And again, I think it's only going to get better over the next couple of weeks, as now they can start to expand their menu and the students can kind of get into a little bit of a better flow, knowing like where you want to go in the different lines for the different items that they're serving. But this has been very positive. So that was the last kind of wrap-up project I just wanted to show you, since we did our little tour at the end of the summer. And now if we switch over to McCarthy for a second, if you recall at town meeting about 3 years ago, we actually had a proposal to do a renovation of the McCarthy tennis court area and integrate some parking at the time. Town meeting ultimately said they didn't want to fund the project at that point because they needed more detail around what the design concept would be, exactly how would parking be integrated. This had been a request on the parking side that had come from the police department, because they have very limited parking in front of the police department to be able to hold community meetings in their community room. So the town kind of kicked it back to us to come up with some concepts. We put a working group together of individuals who are actually going to be convening tomorrow to continue to talk about this. Because one of the things that Town Manager Cohen was able to do and is recommending is, instead of putting this forward to the Capital Planning Committee or even the 26 budget, utilizing some free cash that the town had at the end of June as a town meeting warrant article to actually complete this project now. So we would actually be hopefully a week from yesterday, getting funding at town meeting to actually do this project. That would then allow us to actually go out to bid and hire a designer to kind of put all the bid specs together, to go out to bid and likely get this project done end of spring, summer, early fall. So it would get done a lot quicker than if we had to wait for the formal town meeting in the spring. When we met with the group, Kessel Booz was the landscape architect that worked with us on this. They were also the group that did the high school tennis courts and basketball, so they're a very good group to work with. We said, what could you fit on that property? They came out and took different measurements. Again, this is just very conceptual, and we had them give us a couple of ideas, because when the group met, we said, the best thing for the school and the community would be to potentially have like a multi-sport complex. Not just, one thing, not just tennis or just basketball, whatnot, but to have a lot of different options. So he was able to come up with some different configurations of what spaces might look like at the school. The other thing that we did want to factor in was, you can see kind of at the bottom, there's a little rounded out area with a path. Kind of a picnic area or play area for families, so if they're there on, say, after-school hours or a weekend, that they would have a dedicated kind of play space for younger kids, if older kids were playing. And instead of actually adding parking spaces specifically on that piece of property, the discussion became, let's try to figure out a way so that the police department after hours could better utilize the parking that already exists in McCarthy. So if you'll see, there's a recommendation to actually add a sidewalk that goes on the left side of the driveway, all the way down, say, past that basketball court, and then would cut through the fence at a kind of a flat area and be able to connect to an existing sidewalk at the police department. So cars would be able to park in the regular McCarthy parking lot already, but just have a much easier walk to be able to join the police department.
The problem is always the long.
Well, it's that long fence and having to go all the way down, so this is obviously going to cut that off. And so what we're looking at is a couple of options, like this option here has, 2 street hockey courts, 1 basketball, 2 tennis with pickleball overlay. This other option here has 2 basketball with 2 street hockey and a tennis with the pickleball overlay. So this is what we're going to talk to the group about tomorrow. But ultimately, I do see this being a mix of basketball, street hockey are probably the big ones for the school as far as like phys ed classes and recess and things like that. Less so the tennis and the pickleball, just for the age group of the kids. But it will incorporate those 3 primary sports into the design work. The cost factor is nominal, depending, because it's all just basically an asphalt surface with different designs. So whether we go 2 basketball or 2 tennis, the cost really is negligible. So that's not a big concern for us. But we're going to convene the group again tomorrow and talk about that. And then ultimately, this project is on the town meeting warrant for next Monday. So we'll be there to talk about it and hopefully receive approval for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so any questions on any of the kind of the recap projects or that before we kind of delve into 26?
It would be nice to know how Patrick feels about the cafeteria. It would be wonderful.
Yeah, so I'm liking it so far. On the first few days, it was pretty hard because everyone was trying to get used to it, and the lines were pretty long, and they had to make the lunches longer. But it's starting to get, like, everyone's getting used to it now. I've already seen new menu items happening, like, I think it was like fried noodles, like chicken fried noodles or something. I don't know. It looked awesome. Sadly, everyone ate it. I was too late to it. But yeah, there's already new stuff going on. And it's just like a flow. Like, you get your lunch, and then the sides and all the stuff you can put on. It's all in a line, so it's a good flow. I like it a lot better than the big mob. It would be just everyone trying to reach over people and get their lunch before it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it a lot so far.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else? Great, thank you for displaying those pictures.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. A lot of work went into this. Our facilities group, DPW, really put a lot of time into the different capital projects this summer, even our staff giving recommendations, so I'm very happy to share that. Let me just figure out I have to come off this for a second so that I can look at something else.
You're off.
Thanks. Okay. So as we shift to fiscal 26 planning, and there's a multicolored kind of spreadsheet in your packet, if you refer to that. What I went and did for you is took a look at the capital projects which we had on the list to be considered for fiscal 26. I can walk you through all of them. A couple of the big takeaways I just wanted to point out to you is there were several projects that were deferred for different reasons. Projects related to Parker Middle School, for the most part, were deferred over the last year because we anticipated being able to do a Parker project. And there was a discussion with the capital planning group about putting a 30 to 50-year item into the Parker if it wasn't going to be in existence for that long. So any projects related to Parker have primarily become, if it's any kind of like life safety, things like that, we're certainly doing it. But if it was more of just a kind of a want as opposed to a real need, we were deferring just because there were so many different capital items. We then had two items on the list that are in purple that, for purposes of discussion, the school department's projects add up to a little over $9 million in consideration for this year. So that's obviously a huge sum. All the different town departments are going to have their items to come forward. And overall, the town had historically funded about $3 to $3.5 million in total for a year. Last year, we actually went closer to $4 million. But it's just not conceivable that we're going to spend more than, say, $4 million in a year. So what I did is I went through the list and just kind of put down my recommendations on how to group these in just different project areas. And I'll explain that to you. The first group in green, and I did email you the spreadsheet too, just in case you wanted to fool around with it on your own. But the first ones in green were all kind of tied to school safety and security. So as you know, we tried to do the McCarthy secure entryway as kind of a model for what we could replicate in the rest of the district and the other schools. We have true project costs for what that actually cost us to build out. And so there's a recommendation to move forward, and obviously it's going to look a little bit different because of the school layouts, but to add a secure entryway at Byam, Center, Harrington, South Row, and then Parker, because Parker obviously is still online, and if it's online for 6 or 8 years, in my opinion, it's still a safety issue for those 6 or 8 years. We would want to treat that like all other schools and have a secure visitor management and entryway at that school. At the high school in McCarthy, obviously, they're not on the list because they already have the secure vestibule area. At the high school, what you have is a recommendation to add an emergency egress at the end of one of the stairwells. And then obviously, when you get outside also, you need to add like a cement platform to be able to drop down. If you drive into the parking lot of Chelmsford High School, and the building's kind of an L, the exit door on the far left, if you're on the second floor of the building, or you're on the first floor of the building, and let's say it's a fire drill or an Alice drill or something like that we're doing, what we've found through drilling is that both sets of students are coming down the hallway, and they both have to use the same stairwell to exit out that little side door, and there's a backlog. You get jammed up by doing that. The other side of the building, I don't know the name, but coming down the other side of the building, when you first come down the stairs from the second floor, there's a push door that lets you go right out on the plateau. So this where the band does all their performances and practice and things like that. So the top floor can go right out that door. The bottom floor basically goes out the side door, and there's no backlog. So the recommendation from the security team was basically to add a similar door. And I think the reason that the door is probably not there is because it doesn't walk out onto a flat surface. It's not like you can just put a cement pad and then you walk out and you're done, like you are on the other side. You're actually coming out on a hill. So you actually have to work a stairway into the hill with probably a platform midway down, just because of ADA accessibility and scale and things like that. But the recommendation from the group was to add that kind of an egress, so you're not bottlenecking in an emergency trying to get out of the building. So I do have that in my greens for the high school, because it had gotten recommended a couple of times. And it's not a huge number. It's, $125,000 or $127,000. But still, for the long-term use of that building, that was why that kind of triggered for me being a kind of a top priority and the green priority. And those, just to kind of keep a running tab, added up to like $877,000.
Can I just ask quickly, you mentioned, we don't necessarily need that new vestibule at McCarthy or the high school because they already have them. What's the situation at the Westlands?
We're looking at that, because it's not to say that we wouldn't do that, but it's a very different layout at the Westlands also.
Right.
So we're having to look at that a little bit separately. when projects do tie in the Westlands, I was kind of thinking about that as potentially being like a school committee one-time funding type project. And where Westlands also houses community ed, we can access community ed funding to help cost share, something like that. And I just don't have a hard number on that because the design is so different than all of the other schools. So that's why I didn't bring that forward. It's not that I'm forgetting Westlands.
Struck me like it doesn't have this, like you're pretty open when you go in there, so.
Yeah, but it doesn't have the nook that McCarthy had to be able to kind of create the separate entry. So we've got to get consultants out to actually give us some recommendations about that entry. And when we do, we'll certainly add it on. But I'm thinking almost more for like our funding of that with ComEd.
Got it. Okay.
And why is the cost different, say, like Byman Center, for example? Does it just have to do with the size and the layout of the current vestibules?
Yeah, again, these are budget figures, right? And I did this just based off of what we had at McCarthy. But when you walk into South Row and Center, you're basically walking into a hallway. So all you're going to have to do is construct one wall that goes straight across the area to block it off from entering the building. At Harrington, Byam, and Parker, when you walk in the far right door, you're going to actually have to build two walls. You're going to have to build an L to block off access to the building because you wouldn't block the entire entryway because that's also fire egress. So we're going to have to do a design there, and there's just a little bit more sophistication with the wall, extra wall and the drywall costs and things like that. So that's why those projects cost a little bit more money. It's because of the extra wall. Center and South Row are just going to be much more straightforward. You basically just need to build one wall with one door.
And a much more narrower entrance to those two than
Correct.
the others.
Yeah, it's already a contained space.
Yeah.
Where the others aren't. You're actually
Right.
having to build a containment area.
Yeah, okay.
Got it.
Then we kind of got into the second tier of things, and my thinking on this was projects that we typically have deferred in previous fiscal years. Instead of forgetting about them, usually we bring them back to the front because these have been things we've obviously talked about historically. We thought they were important, we brought them forward, and for whatever reason, if they didn't get funded, I don't want to lose track of them. The first one, which we're still in the middle of getting kind of finalized costing on, Bill is helping us with, is to finalize the art classrooms at the high school. The original project was slated at $450. And basically, a lot of that cost, what I have in here is just a placeholder, $250, is just because of the cost of technology. That's a lot of the cost of the equipment for those rooms. We were able to, I said, again, do the build-out of the space, even the two rooms that we're talking about, but there's still going to be a considerable cost for the technology furnishings for those rooms. The McCarthy, the replacement renovation of the tennis courts, it's still on our list. However, if it gets funded, obviously, Monday night at town meeting, it would come off our list. But I wanted to carry it just because it is a project that was previously deferred. And then at the high school also, the last line of purple, in the art classrooms, there was a separate line item to replace unit ventilators in the art classroom space itself. There's at least two that haven't, there were originally 5, there's at least 2 that haven't been replaced. And so that was a cost that had been carried and updated. So again, if we're going to complete the art spaces, that's why I kind of said that would be a second priority. And then lastly, at McCarthy, we have talked about trying to add some additional parking to that school. Again, we know McCarthy is going to be online for the foreseeable future. There's not a ton of parking, particularly in the middle, in the front of the building. And we talked about almost doing something similar to we did at either Byam or Harrington. At Byam, as you know, they have that giant island in the building, and we actually cut parking spaces into it, so we could conceivably do something almost like where the fire lane is at McCarthy now, to add a whole row of about 29 spaces. The other thing to look at would be similar to Harrington. I don't think the geography lends itself to this, but we would still vet it. Where Harrington actually created an inner parking area right down the middle of the island. So obviously, the architects would take a look and see if that's viable as well to add additional parking, and that would separate the fire lane from the parking lane. But, you know, the thought is to have some type of additional parking at McCarthy. That would not only help us during the school day, but it would also be helpful to, say, the police department after hours, because it's a lot easier to walk from the front of McCarthy to the police station for the community room as it is even, say, the back of the building. And again, that was a project that we had on our list last year that got deferred. And that was my reason for just kind of having it be like a second tier.
I believe McCarthy also gets rented out quite a bit, right?
Oh, it does.
On the weekends, I always see the whole place very full, and the parking is important as well there.
Yeah, I mean, and this group really approved funding for the renovation of the auditorium just a couple of years back. But the auditorium now is in high demand, very similar to the back of the high
Yes.
school, but it's a beautiful performing space. It's got a state-of-the-art sound system and lighting system. And we receive like dance recitals and different groups that want to use the space all the time.
Yes.
It's always jammed for parking. And you can go by an event and see people parking in the fire lane, which they're really not supposed to do.
Yes.
But parking is tight on that property.
And it's supposed to help the flow of traffic too?
Well,
A little
yeah.
left lane, a little-
When you're coming out of the school, the other thing was, it's too tight to have there be like two lanes of traffic, someone going right and someone going
Okay.
left. So what this would do is actually open up a little bit the exit area, so you could actually have two lines of cars going. Now, whether people think about getting in the right lane, there's another story, but at least if you had a lane that can go right, and they can go right almost all the time, the hard part is trying to get out and go left.
Right.
So if you have a car that's trying to go left, they hold up the whole traffic line for people who are trying to go right.
Okay.
So that would also have to come from the traffic, kind of engineer who would be looking at this. But that was a thought process of opening the exit of the space onto North Road.
I could see that helping a lot, because
I
I
think it
stuck
would.
there.
Oh, yeah.
Diana?
Can I just ask, so I see obviously that included on this second tier priority is the tennis courts thing that we just talked about. That is a town meeting article. I also see the two kind of third tier things being things that we're sort of waiting for MBTA. Is that?
SBA.
I mean,
MSBA.
sorry, MSBA.
Yep.
And I'm just curious why, or I guess what's the logic between like raising those to high priority? Is that like if they aren't funded through other means? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so I had two thoughts on that. The first one is the South Row roof. So in addition to the regular kind of core program that the MSBA has for like a new school building project,
Right.
they also have what they call accelerated repair.
Yeah, I
which are
remembered
like-
that discussion, yeah.
Yeah, it's smaller projects that deal with roofs, boilers, and South Row's roof was old enough to qualify to apply. So if we applied for MSBA funding, approximately 52%, 50% of the roof would be paid through accelerated repair. So instead of going forward at town meeting last year and asking for the whole 1.2 million to do ourselves, we said, let's put an application in to see if we can actually get it partially funded through MSBA. If we can, then, about 600,000 would be coming from them, 600 would be coming from us, it'd be a savings to the town. And that might actually allow us to leverage and do something a little bit quicker, funding-wise on our end. So the application went in for the accelerated repair at South Row. The group has to come out and do what they call their due diligence, which they did last summer. And then the MSBA is voting at their October, it's either 30th or 31st meeting to invite projects in. So we won't find out officially until mid-next week, when the agenda gets posted, if South Row gets invited in or not. Again, working with the town manager, we kind of preemptively put a town meeting article on for Monday night to authorize money to be able to at least pay for the design work that would happen. I think it was like $100,000 or maybe $125,000, but somewhere in that ballpark to just get the initial approvals. And then if we get this funding, we can really kind of defer and work with MSBA to fund it. My thought process on this is, I think the South Row roof has a very good chance of going the MSBA route, so I think it would be better to wait and see if we get that. The reason I kind of had McCarthy roof as a second tier, not that it's not necessary at all, it also is a project that technically was partially deferred. But I know the town is still working on the first phase, the first 250,000 that they had to do the assessment and figure out like what the longer term plan for that building would be. And I just don't know, again, this is a conversation we'll have with DPW even over the next month or so as we're finding this. I don't know if they would even be ready necessarily if they received the extra funding to act quickly enough on it to have it happen in this funding cycle. Not that it doesn't need to happen, it absolutely does, but that was my thought process on that.
Okay, thank you.
By the time we meet at Capitol, we should know on South Row.
Oh, you will?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll know, I mean, the funny thing is, we'll know like next week, midweek, but it's like a couple
Before town
days after,
meetings, yeah.
well, it's after town meeting.
Yeah.
But the roof hit the age limits. I think the application was strong, so I don't, I'm hopeful that that's going to happen. And as soon as we know for sure, we'll let you guys know. but we're just trying to leverage whatever state money we can, because then we can do more on our own. Then we get into, and again, in my mind, as I'm doing this, I'm also kind of thinking like total dollar amounts. So if the first tier was 877, the second tier is $1.4 million, the third tier is 2.1. I don't know how much further down the line we're going to get realistically than that. We've already kind of exceeded, probably the school department share of capital. I then just took a look at the different projects that were out there as things that, for twofold. Number one, I definitely think the district would benefit from having them done, and I think it would be a service to the kids in the schools if we can do that. Some of these projects are projects that you're actually going to see. Unfortunately, when you do you put a new hot water tank in or a new roof, yes, functionally it works well, but people in the building don't really kind of see that. If you, refinish, say, a stage floor, right, that the kids are using during lunch or performances, you kind of see that. So I try to kind of mix things that they're going to see with things that they're not going to see. Also, in my mind, some of these projects aren't huge dollar amounts. And, potentially, if they don't get funded through the town, I'd like to have some projects queued up for when we do our one-time spending or our one-time projects. And these are smaller projects that we can handle on our own without any kind of major construction work. So you'll see, like in the blue grouping, there are 4 different schools that were slated to have their stages redone. Whether it's repair, there's some pieces that need to be replaced, and then refinish. The hardwood floor stages at Byam Center, South Row, and Westlands. That is on here. There was some exhaust fan repairs or replacements that were noted in the HVAC study at Harrington. In Harrington at the kitchen, this past summer at Byam, we actually took the kitchen floor up, like the prep and the serving kitchen, not the caf where the kids sit, but where the food service workers work, to put in like a non-stick floor, very similar to what we did at the high school, like a poured floor. Because, again, the floors in the buildings are old, they're original to the building, and sometimes they do crack and they require extra maintenance. You don't want them to be a slipping hazard for the staff that are in the kitchen. I have to talk to Christine at DPW about this one, and again, we're going to confer on some of these priorities as well. But Harrington roof was on the list to be considered for this year. Obviously, that 1.3 is just a big number, and I don't know, like in the scheme, like this is almost like one of those fire truck items. Yeah. Every once in a while, like the fire department, they needed, I think last year, a new fire truck, and it was close to $1 million. So if you're going to fund a fire truck or you're going to fund a $1.3 million roof, then there's not much more you can do other than that. But I want to just check with them. Obviously, I think it's necessary if it's on the list, just around like scaling and what can they actually do if they do receive the funding. McCarthy definitely within the next couple of years, again, because the building is going to stay online, is due for a boiler replacement. So that's going to be something that we have to look at. Again, whether the boiler replacement could potentially, and this is one of the other things we're going to have to do, when the MSBA at the end of October gives their rewards for, say, boilers or roofs and things like that, we'll be able to see the age of the projects that got funded. Because if we have, so let's say the average age was 25 years, or the minimum age was 25 years. If our roof is only 19, then we know we have to try to fund it internally ourselves. We can't wait 6 years to get on the list for MSBA. But if we have a roof that's, say, 24 years, and we know in another year it would qualify for MSBA funding, well, maybe it's worth patching and keeping it functional for a year until it qualifies, because then you're only paying for half of it as opposed to the full amount. So this is an exercise we kind of go through, but the MSBA meeting at the end of the month will actually be quite telling, just to let us know like what age of roofs, boilers, and I think it's window projects actually got approved and then which didn't. But that's why I kind of had it in this particular tier. Same thing at South Row. Obviously, over the next couple of years, they do need a new domestic hot water heater. They had a roof fan project. This is just to replace some exhaust fans that are up on the roof now. And then actually, there's one item on here that Brian is confirming for me, but we think we actually completed already when we were doing the renovation, which was removing the obsolete dish room equipment at Westlands. That, by the time we next meet, might be knocked off the list. He thinks we already actually did that. So if we did, we'd obviously remove that. And then lastly, for this category was at Westlands, all of our schools have like cement treads in the old buildings. And what we've added is like the rubber treads, just to make it a little bit less slippery for kids. So that's obviously something that it's Westland's turn. It wasn't something we were doing, 4 or 5 schools in any one year. We were kind of separating it out so that we could move well with it. And then that blue tier added up to 2.4 million. So what I ended up doing for these last 2 tiers, again, thinking that it's just unlikely that we would ever get to this area, but not wanting to lose track of the items, is just listed for you by trade, whether it's HVACs or roofs or exhaust fans, things like that. Items for us to kind of monitor and track, but kind of going into it knowing that it's unlikely that we're going to get to that level of project to be funded this year. And we're going to have to kind of come back at it and figure out prioritization-wise, what do we look at a year from now? So that was, again, I think this sheet will be easier to work with than that first report I gave you. That was a PDF you couldn't manipulate. And I did send this to you in Excel in case you want to do some manipulations on your own. Between now and that first meeting, when we meet in November, we need to kind of finalize what our priorities are going to be. We certainly don't need to do it now, but I at least wanted to give you like my kind of thinking and rationale as to where we should and how we should approach some of this. But I'm happy to talk it through. And ultimately, in the end, if you decide something should get moved up or something should get moved down, that's what we'll do. I just wanted to give us a starting point to work from.
Now, all the green ones, those are additions to our old list too, right? We didn't have those on the.
The only one that was previously on was the egress at the high school.
Okay,
The secure entry area
Yeah.
wasn't on our list previously.
Yeah.
But we wanted to kind of wait until we did the McCarthy one to figure out conceptually how did it work, and then what were the true costs, because we hadn't ever bid something like that before.
And then the ones at the bottom regarding Parker, for example, I assume those are things that would in theory be higher priorities, but we're waiting until we kind of know where things are going with the new school.
And you can see on the little note, like the deferred, a couple of them have been deferred for a couple of years. We would just keep deferring them, like the elevator. Again, the roof was actually ironically like a smaller roof piece. It was something that they're just patching for the time being. But yes, let's say the McCarthy and Parker project didn't go forward, then obviously we'd have to go back and address the elevator.
We just don't want to lose sight of them, so they want to keep
So
them
that's,
on the
I know,
list.
that's why I just put them at the bottom.
Yeah, that makes sense. And in some ways, this is it's worth keeping in mind these potential expenses as the town weighs the decision about where to go with.
I think the other thing that's just telling, when you look at the list, I mean, obviously, I think it's a true list. It's over $9 million just for the schools, never mind what the town's going to have. But I think in part of our argument or rationale for why we think, we potentially should be doing a new school building project is because these other buildings in town aren't going to get any younger. It takes a lot of work to keep them up, and it's a big investment to keep them going. We can go back and, like, to Diana's point, we can take a look at what actually we've been deferring from, say, Parker, that would have to jump to a top of the list if we didn't do some type of a new school. But it does take a lot of money to keep older buildings functioning, when their systems start to need to be replaced, whether it's the roofs, the boilers, the windows.
Yeah, I think it's worth, everybody wants to talk about the cost of a new building, which is, it's real, but there's also a cost to not building. And I
Right.
think that's worth having some actual figures to understand.
One question on the, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Did you say?
You ask a question first, because mine was more comment.
You sure? Okay, on the next, right before Parker starts.
Yes.
South Rowell Schools classrooms? What is that?
Yeah, I was
Oh,
curious
that's all it
about that
says,
one
yeah,
too.
classrooms.
We're replacing classrooms?
Oh, no, you know what, when, in the spreadsheet that I sent you, you have the complete narrative. For whatever reason, when I converted the spreadsheet to a PDF, all the words in the cell didn't fill in, it didn't come in the bottom. It actually says replace damaged metal shelving and doors in classrooms. So
okay.
it's more of a cosmetic type thing, where, again, a lot of those buildings are just older, and the casework in the buildings, starts to need some work and things like that. Obviously, if it was anything from a safety perspective, we would repair it. But this is almost like, if we're going to keep these buildings going, you're going to start to see over the next couple of years some items for like replacing the casework in the classrooms, just because you do need to modernize the space a little bit. But it actually says replace damaged metal shelving and doors in classrooms.
Okay, Makes sense.
There were a couple where the whole paragraph didn't come
I
in, so,
see that.
sorry about that.
Thank you.
My comment was, excuse me, I've been attending a lot of the meetings that the town's been having about the strategic plan and getting community input. And housing, I was talking to John a little while ago, housing is certainly up there with people's concerns about it. But another big concern is keep the infrastructure of the town up, which is roads, certainly, but buildings. And people have been talking a lot about the aging buildings in town and how important it is to keep them updated. So if that ends up being in the town strategic plan as a high priority, it can only help the schools as well to make sure there's a lot of focus on keeping these buildings up to date. So we can be hopeful about that.
Just to add to that too, I was served on the capital committee, and there is a ton of infrastructure stuff. So Christine Clancy did a great job surveying all the buildings, and last year was all roofs, boilers, HVAC. That's why our classrooms didn't go through, the McCarthy parking lot didn't go, our tennis courts didn't go through the parking lot because they were doing infrastructure. I don't know if it's going to be any different this year. So, getting stages and stuff like that may be a difficult sell. Definitely the safety stuff, I think we can definitely make an argument for. But just keep that in mind too, as we're prioritizing, we could put something way up there, but we go to the big committee and they say, well, that's not, we got to do something at the library.
Not an essential.
It's not
in the
essential. So
same way.
just kind of throwing that out there.
Yeah, I'm not saying that these are like small things, but like some of the departments were like, even when it came to like vehicle replacement and things like this, like that in prior years might have been something that you just approved and went through. But people were like, could you ride that truck for another year? Because, I remember it was HVAC, I think, at the library.
Yeah.
There was a HVAC, the air conditioning wasn't working, and there was also something significant with the roof that had to be replaced. So it's like, you got to get the roof on before you do the, a car, or try to get the car going. So I do have to say, all the town departments are very collaborative when we get together. It's not like a fight, and everyone just kind of puts their stuff on the table, makes their compelling argument to why something should happen. The capital committee meeting sits, they kind of just like weigh it all over, talk out a lot of it. It'll be like, Maria, could you possibly defer this for a year because, John's thing really has to get done. And there's a lot of give and take that happens. John Souza does a really nice job kind of shepherding everyone through the process. But it's getting tough, And again, it was a stretch for the town to go to even $4 million of capital. I think when I first came, it was like hovering around 2. It started to creep up to 3. And then last year, there were just so many big projects, and there was a fire truck.
Yeah, the
But there
fire
were
truck,
so
right, the
many
fire truck was over
projects,
$1
those
million.
fire trucks will kill you. It jumped us right to like the $4 million mark, which was a lot.
The only thing I thought of in terms of stages and things like that, spaces that we might think are for recreation or whatever, it may actually become space for classrooms and for, if we get to a point where we have to put up dividers and do things like that because we don't have enough space in the elementary level, so.
And
We're not at that right now.
the interesting about stages is they can actually also be a source of income revenue because we can then rent out those stages so it can bring money back in return. So it's not only a payout.
Yeah. It's true.
So how do you want to handle, people put together their own individual lists and send them to you? or-
I would say, for tonight, I would just kind of take this in. I'm not asking for any kind of actions or anything. I would let it kind of sink in, see if conceptually you agree, you disagree, if there's particular areas you'd like me to refocus on, if just between now and the next meeting, you reached out. If you wanted to go through this, because I did send it to you in Excel, if you wanted to on your own, say, make a little note for me or reorder something, I can try to take your opinions all in and then collectively send you out something well in advance of the next meeting so you can have it in front of you. But I just wanted you to know how I approached it with kind of the school safety stuff and the deferred stuff, just so you'd actually be able to see that. And I think in the back of your mind, be thinking, if $4 million is what the town allocates, and about half goes to schools and half goes to the towns, we've got about $2 million worth of projects to advance in that ballpark.
Right, and if we prioritize the safety stuff, we got $1 million, we can advance it.
And we'll
that's
also
so
know after
important.
Monday if which is a big number, it's close to $1 million for the McCarthy tennis area.
Yeah.
And then also we'll know midweek if the South Row roof is gonna go forward, because if that goes forward with MSBA, then that's gonna knock.
It takes two big things
right
off the
off. So
list.
Those are 2 big numbers right out of the mix. And we'll have a much better sense by the end of next week.
Yeah, and on the state level, wasn't there a bit more funding available for buildings?
They're trying to push for the core program. The accelerated repair has been a pretty similar number. They're trying to push to allow more programs into the core program, but that won't affect us at this point
No.
because we're already in for Parker.
The other thing is, I think relying on this, I rely on your judgment, or after reviewing all the reports you've reviewed and so on things like the roof. I mean, if the roof is really an issue, it might not be visible, but everybody's gonna be very upset if it suddenly starts leaking all the time. So, you know, I rely on you for that, and, it's been very good so far, all the years I've been on this committee, so I'm continuing
thank
to
you.
do that.
We'll also, between now and the next time we meet also, we'll have our meetings with DPW to also kind of make sure we're on the same page, and, because they know the roofs even more than I know the roofs. So we'll
Right.
make sure that, like, that stuff is happening. And we're also going through the first, 3 tiers into the 4th tier a little bit of projects, and re-estimating costs, just so that we know we kind of have actual costs. Something might go up a little bit, something might go down a little bit. So we'll have like final figures for you.
Okay.
I guess I'm looking more for just like, general agreement or disagreement about the projects, the ordering, things along those lines. And I'm open to any suggestions you have between now and the next meeting. I can try to put something together that maybe takes that into consideration. Like I said, get it out to everyone.
Yep.
And then we just talk it through at the next meeting.
Okay.
Can you, I just want to make sure I'm fully understanding this before I go off on my own to give this a deeper look. The deferred portion of the renovate art classrooms line, the remaining $250,000 approximately.
The deferred, which one, I'm sorry?
The renovate art classrooms, it's the top
Yeah,
of the
okay.
purple. You had said, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly, that would be the computers, correct?
Largely, it's the student furniture in 2 classrooms and the technology. So the computers, those are like the special drawing labs that they use for the art. And then also they do the graphic art class in that one, they do the photography classroom in there. So it would be any of the equipment that goes along with those classes.
The reason I'm asking is in part because, I look at that and that is, $250,000 is a significant amount when you look at the first few items on the next tier down, right, being $50,000 or so. So I'm curious, I know it'll be helpful to get more information on the level of urgency for a roof or a boiler, but I also would be curious how outdated the equipment is for that art class. It would be lovely to have everything brand new and state-of-the-art all at once since those classrooms are renovated, but I don't know if that, to me, necessarily is more urgent than, let's say, having some smaller but immediately felt projects happen at a variety of schools too. I'd love to know how urgent it feels, how out of date are we with the technology that they have?
Quite honestly, like, that's the perfect kind of question to ask me, because when Bill is, say, putting together his quotes and things like that, he can do like a little analysis that says, here's what we currently have, this is the age, here's the replacement cycle that I was thinking about, here's kind of the recommendation, and then you can have that data when you're figuring out, is this a priority for me, or is it, like you said, a stage in one of the schools? So no, those are the things, if you just kind of let me know between now and then, like, I don't know off the top of my head the age of that equipment. I just know that it was up for a redo cycle, because that's how it got on the list to begin with. But no, that stuff I'm happy to track down for you for the next meeting.
Great.
Yeah. The only thing I know about this is when my daughter was there, she took quite a bit of digital photography and those type of courses, and it was already not at the versions that it should have been at in terms of the ability for the equipment to run it and so on. So she's now a junior in college. So there is some aging to this.
And I'm curious, though, if there have been some not quite rising to capital investment, things that have happened, purchasing new software and things like that, that may have updated it since then, too, and like, we're just not necessarily always in
Then
the
it's the
loop.
speed of the thing, but what I think is really important for us in terms of the arts department, to realize that a lot of it has gone the way of digitizing in terms of the creativity, design, all of this stuff. So, in the old days, you'd have a lot of students who were incredible and wanted to just do painting, those type of things. Now it's also the digital arts that are really absolutely crucial, so.
Yeah,
Just
we have 5 classrooms in total at the high school. 3
Yeah.
are more your traditional spaces and 2 are more your kind of tech.
And I remember
spaces.
when the teachers were updating themselves on how to teach digital photography and all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like a perfect question, so I will work that one for you, but like if other things like that come up, you want me to take a look at, just shoot me an email or make a note on the form, send it back to me, and I'm happy to look at that for you.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Thank you for this.
Great, all right,
You're welcome.
all right, budget.
Yeah, second item, we'll ask Joanna to review the first quarter financials with us.
Thank you. So this is the first quarter report for this school year, so July through September. It's our regular packet of, you have a memo, you have the financials for our $73.880 million annual operating budget. You have a grant and revolving fund summary, and you have the summary of the balances of the student activity accounts, so the clubs and the teams at the high school and both middle schools. Overall, right now, everything, labor and non-labor accounts are favorable, and some of our largest expenses, such as special education out-of-district tuitions, are in line with our budget this year, as well as our circuit breaker offset. So I've just wrote about a few of the larger variances. And right now, our classroom teacher category is favorable by $187,497. One of the reasons we're favorable is we had the one line item for the lane change accounts of $171,049. Several teachers achieved their lane change, and this committee approved the budget transfer at the September 17th meeting of $146,942 for those salary increases. So this leaves a favorable amount of $24,107, which will remain. The remainder of the favorable variances is due to cases where we've hired a teacher, a new teacher, at less than a master's step 3. If we've done that, if they come in at a bachelor's step 1, that category will be favorable. And the converse is if we hired a teacher at greater than master's step 3, or if there was an internal transfer, perhaps at a master's step 8, that account would be unfavorable. But when it is all net together with all the employees in this category, we are favorable approximately $148,000 because of all those differences in salary. And then right now, there's a small amount that we're favorable because of approved unpaid leaves of absences for teachers in this category. The next category that has a large favorable variance is the specialist teachers, so that's special ed, ELL, and our tutoring supports, and that category is favorable by $327,279. And it's for the same reasons as I talked about in the general classroom teacher category is happening in this category as well. And just wanted to point out, we did have one vacancy at the beginning of the school year in this category, so the September report is favorable. However, we did successfully hire the teacher, and she started September 20th. So that favorable variance will not be that large of an amount in the next quarter report, or even on the October report that we'll post to the website at the beginning of November. And then just a reminder that this category has an offset budgeted of $115,000, so that the CHIPS revolving fund helps fund a portion of the CHIPS teacher if needed in fiscal 2025. The next category that has a large variance is the employee separation costs of $166,330. And this is the account we budget for those teachers who retired last year and let us know that they were going to retire before the deadline in, is it November? And we paid some of those incentives in June of 2024, which is fiscal year 2024, rather than July of 2024, which is this fiscal year 2025. So because we had some room to do that in our favorable variances in fiscal 2024. This committee approved a budget transfer from this category at the September 17th meeting of $27,758 into the art rooms and science lab renovations that we were talking about earlier. So in the end, when we pay the next incentive, which will be these employees selected to receive it in January, this category should remain favorable by $94,516. So when the superintendent was talking about possible one-time purchases in this fiscal year, these might be some of the categories where we would recommend the shift, the budget transfers come from. Out-of-district tuitions. So right now in the September reports, the category is favorable by $1.1 million. The way we budget for this is they're funded from two accounts, the local budget, which is here, and the circuit breaker revolving fund, which is on the a little later in this presentation. Right now, only at the end of September, only $3 million was encumbered. That means the purchase order was entered into the system. But even today, just a few weeks later, we're fully encumbered up to the $6.9 million that was budgeted. So this was just a timing issue. And next year, we'll work to try to have all the encumbrances in for the September reports. So just a reminder here of what was originally budgeted. We originally budgeted $6.9 million in tuitions. That's cash out the door to all these providers. We budgeted a circuit breaker offset of $2.5 million, a Valley Collaborative credit of $300,000 for a net amount of $4.1 million, which is what is in these reports. Since that time, so that was all done, remember, in February of 2024. Since that time, we have more information. It's probably easier to look at the next chart on the last page. We prepaid tuitions in fiscal year 2024. So that's 2025 tuitions. You can prepay certain things in the earlier fiscal year. So we prepaid $1.725 million of tuitions in fiscal 2024. We're fully encumbered. We're still going to have the offset of $2.5 million. It's a little bit higher because we got a little extra money in their last circuit breaker payment by about $4,000 last year. We think our Valley credit is going to be $294,216. The superintendent mentioned to me that the Valley board meeting is coming up in November, and we'll have a number then, but he's not expecting it to be that far off from this number. So basically, because we prepaid the tuitions at the end of last fiscal year, that amount is the amount that we're going to be probably favorable in this category. And then that would be up to the committee to listen to recommendations on what to do with those funds. Should we prepay again, at the end of, fiscal 25, the fiscal 26 tuitions? We have time to work on that decision. And then also, you could have students move in and we could have more tuitions that weren't originally planned in the $6.9 million. And then the last chart is just where we are on the school choice revolving fund. We used to use this as an offset to special ed tuitions. We haven't in the last few years, but we're using it to offset the one-to-one computer initiatives. So right now, the fund is at almost 2.9 million. We are expecting, well, we already paid actually the lease payments for the one-to-one computers for 4 grades. And we're anticipating the balance at the end of this fiscal year to be 2.83 million. So I'm going to pause, and that's the local budget, and see if there's any questions.
Questions? I know last year we got extra money from circuit breaker. Is the possibility this year? I don't even remember what it was for.
So last year, we got 2 extra amounts. We had extraordinary relief, which is always available if your tuitions, it's a little formula, greater than 25% and of your total and your net school spending. It's a little formula, so we'll keep an eye on that always. And that's one-time money. It doesn't hurt your cap. It doesn't hurt your formulas. It doesn't hurt to apply for extraordinary relief. And that was like 500 and some thousand. And then I don't think this will come back, the reserve relief, where the state had extra funds. That's the first time I had seen that. So I haven't heard anything about the opportunity for reserve relief. We did get the reserve relief too, but just a reminder that, and we got the money in May, but that cash that we got is kind of subtracted from our quarterly payments that we will get throughout the quarter in fiscal '25. So they recognize that reserve relief as part of your overall circuit breaker claim.
Other questions? Anything that we need to keep an eye on in the overall budget? Like, I know transportation was a little high last year, some utilities, I mean, and it's early, I know. Anything that we,
Yep, for transportation, it's probably likely that special ed transportation will be higher than the budget. I was talking with Amy Reese last week about that. There's just more students needing the transportation, and the rates are pretty straightforward on what to budget. It's just the number of vehicles you need.
okay.
So we'll keep an eye on that, and if that happens, we do have some flexibility with paying for more of the regular big buses from the transportation revolving fund to help offset that. And it's a little early yet to know how we're going to do against our homeless transportation and our foster transportation. Those are tough to estimate. And then, did you want to speak about the utilities from what the town manager said, or? Okay.
No, that's okay. I know, I don't have the number off the top of my head. The town manager had entered into a new agreement. I think it was electricity or gas.
It just said utility. Yeah.
I think it was
It's
one or the
electric.
other, because I think they have the other one coming up too. But just that there actually is a decent rate increase that's going to go into effect at some point this fiscal year. But he was telling us early for more budget planning purposes for next year to make sure that we account for that. If I find those, we'll obviously put it in the budget for next year, but
Yeah.
if I find that, I can relay that to you.
Any other questions on this?
On the grants, we have still about 307,000 available. We have that.
Are you talking about ESSER? Okay, so, good segue. So the next report is the grant and revolving fund summary, and the top one.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. The
Good
top
segue there.
parts are,
Good segue, you nailed it.
the first part is the grants and grants, and then the second page is the revolving fund. So the very first grant at the top of the page is the very last of the ESSER 3 grant. Okay, so we are fully spent and encumbered the full
1.4 million over the 3.5 years. What the 307 is I'm waiting for the revenue to come from the state, and I don't record that as a receipt until we actually have it. So I've requested all of the funds, but if it doesn't come by September 30th, it doesn't make it on this report. But we are all done with that grant. We'll make a couple final payments, and we're waiting for that last revenue.
Great.
Yep. So the top section is kind of all the, what I call the carryover grants. And then right below that are our new entitlement grants that have all been approved. We just haven't received, again, by the end of September, any revenues or spent anything on them yet. And then the next section is kind of the private grants. The circuit breaker is down in that section too. Our balance at the beginning of the year was the 2.285. We got one quarterly payment. That was actually last year's payment that came in July. And then the next pages are all the grant, or all the revolving funds, such as school nutrition, athletics, turf fields. And all of those are, none of those are in deficit and growing.
If you could just remind me, on the special ed reserve fund,
Oh, yes.
are we at its maximum
No.
or not, right?
No, the maximum will be around, I want to say like 1.4 million, between
Okay.
1.4 and 1.5 million.
Thank you.
It's a certain percent of your net school spending.
Any other questions on the grants?
And then the last few pages are the balances for the high school and the middle school student activity accounts. The high school is at approximately 181,000, and then there's all the clubs and activities listed. The McCarthy Middle School is at 33,000 with their set of clubs, and the Parker is at 63,000 in their set of clubs.
Question on the activity funds? I take it they figured out McCarthy and Parker after they split, now that is everything?
Yeah, so we ended up pretty much leaving everything alone. Our policy did say if a fund, or if a club leaves, it goes to the general student body fund within the school. So that's what happened to, so Parker's 7th and 8th grade monies went into the Parker General Student Body Fund. And then at McCarthy, the McCarthy 5th and 6th grade funds went to the McCarthy General Student Body Fund. That's where,
As long as it worked out.
well, that's what the policy said, so that's what we went with.
All right, anything else on the financials? Well, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Great. Third item on the agenda this evening is just the personnel report for the month of September. And you can see we've gone down to a more manageable number, but we still did have a number of new hires come in during the month of September. Again, most of these are support staff in various roles in the district. We did have a couple of teachers who started after the first of the year, so they're listed here. And then we did have a resignation and a couple of retirements that became effective after the start of the school year. So those are our personnel transactions for the month of September.
So a .2 Spanish teacher is just teaching one class?
It's a very long story.
Okay.
Yes, but it's just teaching one class.
Okay.
Russo's retiring, huh?
He did?
Tired. Done.
Crazy, huh? I didn't hear that. Good for him.
Yep.
And to Susan, I don't know Susan as well, but
Yeah, no,
Rob, I've run
she
into
was
a
a
bunch of times.
very long time psychologist over Parker, did a super job. And then Rob actually retired at the end of, well, he left at the end of the school year, but he didn't officially retire until September.
Gotcha. Good for him,
That
though.
was a birthday thing, yep.
Right, any questions on personnel? Okay. Field trips.
Field trips, just two field trips for me. One I had emailed you about previously. It was a request to approve the cross-country team, which Patrick spoke about earlier. They had a very good meet in Manhattan. going to the Manhattan qualifier in Riverdale last weekend. It came in after we had a meeting, so I didn't have a chance to post it on the last agenda. So this is kind of a retroactive acknowledgement of that trip. And then McCarthy Middle School, the grade 7 students, their annual trip to see A Christmas Carol in Manchester, New Hampshire on December 20th.
So do we have to approve the one that's already passed by, or is it just?
It's up to you. I mean, it happened.
Right.
It was without event. Maybe just at least acknowledge it
Okay.
if you want to.
To retroactively approve the Chelmsford High School cross-country track team qualifying members Manhattan Cross Country Invitational in Riverdale, New York, from October 12th to the 13th of '24.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so it's retroactively approved. All
I
right,
move that we approve the McCarthy Middle School grade 7 students attending the performance of A Christmas Carol at the Palace Theater in Manchester, New Hampshire, December 20th, 2024.
I second.
we have to approve something for Christmas already.
Unbelievable.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Christmas is coming.
It is coming.
It's the holiday season's flying.
Ghosts are coming again.
All right,
And that's all I had.
okay, great. Anyone have any liaison reports?
I have
Anna?
a few. So on the 7th, I attended the South Row PTO meeting. And South Row is diving deep into restorative circles this year, which is great. I know we heard from, I think it was Harrington, another elementary school last year that's really been focusing on that. So it's nice to see that sort of spreading through the elementary schools. That is going to feature in the school's parent engagement night this year as well. Lots of interest in the community on the topic of internet safety. So that is coming up, and they're looking at ways to support that in school. They have staff PLCs on the topics of restorative practices, SEL, and neurodivergent learners. Those are obviously going to yield a lot of strengthening of teachers' practices in those areas. The other kind of big, kind of fun things coming up, Pumpkin Fest is approaching on October 19th, which is open to anyone in our community, not only South Row families. And there's a lot of conversation about what technology tools to purchase for the PTO that will enable them to more capably process transactions at events and things like that, fundraisers. Interestingly, I heard sort of similar conversations happening when I was at Parker and McCarthy PTO meeting. So I think there may be some talk among the schools about there are ways that we can share these expenses among the PTOs. Maybe one purchases one and one purchases another, and they allow each other to borrow. At the Parker and McCarthy PTOs on the 10th of October, I got to hear that the Parker change drive for, I think it was the Jimmy Fund, was successful. At McCarthy, I heard that there seemed to be a better sense of community with the kids coming in now that they've all been together. They had been together last year at Parker, so, or also at McCarthy. So they'd all been together the prior year, which has helped them feel like they've been better developing a sense of community. So that's great to hear as we think about the transition between the schools. They talked about something we'd already heard, which is about the 8th graders that spoke as part of the town's strategic planning process. There was a conference at SNHU for some student leaders that included representatives from McCarthy. And other than that, student activities have ramped up, which means late buses have ramped up. And the middle schools are full of events coming up as well. Notably, McCarthy is thinking about the recycling day on November 2nd from 8 to 12, which is a big fundraiser for McCarthy and I believe Center School as well. And there will be a craft fair at Parker on December 8th from 10 to 2. So those are big things coming up. And I will say, one of the things I've been talking with both of those schools about, PTOs about, has been my own interest in hearing what families are thinking about technology use in general. Specifically things that might eventually have policy implications. So I've been hearing about those at the PTO meetings as well as emails following.
Susan, you?
I attended Harrington PTO meeting last week. They recently had a walkathon, which was very successful. Students raised over $5,000 in the walkathon, which is great. And that money's going to go toward running their field day they have in the spring. They also had just a social event at Roller Kingdom, which they really didn't anticipate raising a lot of money, but the school got $1,000 back from that. So another successful PTO event. The trunk or treat is coming up on October 19th. Holiday shop is going to be running in December 14th. And then there's a few other various fundraisers and things coming up. Interesting is you just reported that there was discussion about expenses and transactions. The current PTO at Harrington is really keeping tabs on the money and how it gets used and their liability in some of this, and had a lot of questions from you about it. So maybe all the PTO people are talking to each other about how this money funnels through them. So I do have a few questions that I will follow up with you, just to help them understand what's going on with that.
Anything?
For me, trunk or treat, October 19th is a very popular day. We'll be at Center from 1 to 3. Their recycle day, jointly with McCarthy, comes up on November 2nd. The signs are going to be going up. And I attended the first meeting of the Wellness Committee. We are in compliance again this year, which means that we basically have to go through this whole program to make sure that our program is in compliance. And we talked quite a bit about the fact that really this law deals with wellness in a couple of aspects, but not in mental type of wellness. So emotional, social type of wellness is not measured at all through this particular committee or this program right now. It's just not in the law. It hasn't been updated. And this, and anybody can participate in this committee, by the way. So if folks are interested, just reach out to be added to the committee. This week, we also have a Council of Schools meeting coming up.
Thursday?
I believe on Thursday, right?
Yep.
So maybe that's something to, that the Council of Schools can look into, the payment programs and so on, for all of the PTOs.
Great.
I'll bring it up to them.
Sure.
All right, anyone have any new items?
Now that the kitchen in the high school's done, can we talk about halal chicken? For the love of God, can we get the food fixed now?
The food's fixed, the food's great.
Well, food fixed that, for people that can eat it, it's fixed.
Yes,
If the food is not edible to that person, it's not fixed, so.
The menu is obviously going to be expanding.
Okay.
The staff are doing a really good job
Yeah.
with what they have over there. And yes, they'll continue to expand so that their offerings are great. A lot of it does come into like where they can get food, how they can get
Yeah.
food and things like that. But I'd give it a little time to really get going. It's only been a couple of weeks and they're working really hard.
Okay, I'm just giving, you gave me the goalpost, and then you crossed it. And so I'm gonna keep asking. So I'll ask of you again in a few weeks. Thank you.
As Patrick said, we have more choices, right?
Yeah.
The food is wonderful. There is a population that's missing there. So.
Diana?
I just wanted to elevate, I've received several emails from separate parents attending separate schools about some concerns around the unreliability of the buses this year so far. And I know we only have so much control over what happens because we do contract out the busing and, we don't directly manage it. But I did want to elevate, I have only been on the school committee less than a year, but I was pretty surprised kind of by the volume of concerns that I've been hearing. Specifically, it sounds like it might be particularly problematic in the center school district area, but a lot of buses coming very unreliably late, very frequently, which is causing a lot of families concerns with other plans that they have and things like that, never knowing when their kids are getting home from school. So I bring that up, not because we can directly do anything about it, but because I want to make sure that that stays in the back of our minds as we think about what kinds of expectations to set and what kinds of factors we can include as we make decisions eventually for, the next time we put out an RFP for transportation. And also curious if there is anything that we can do to ask or put some pressure on the bus company to try to hire more folks. It's always what I'm hearing from these parents is it's always well, we just don't have enough drivers. And so we wind up having to, combine routes. But it feels like that reasoning has been going on for a very long time and that still hasn't been solved. So I don't know if there's something they can do to get more of those drivers into place. Sharing that concern.
Anybody else? I just have a couple of reminders. First of all, we don't meet again till the 12th because we have election coming up the first week in November, so it's going to be good 4 weeks, yeah. 4 weeks before we meet again.
We'll all be going to the
Yeah, I
conference.
was going to say, in the interim, we do have the MSC conference down in the Cape the week before, and then also Monday starts town meeting, and there are several items that concern the schools on there. Just, I know most of us are town meeting reps, but, you have the Parker feasibility, just the funding of it, and the tennis courts and the South Row roof, so just to kind of keep that in the back of your head. My other thing is just, I know we just went through this, but in the news recently, the whole thing with AI and, whether a school district getting sued because their policy didn't say something, but just we don't have a policy on AI. I know we had, Bill worked on some procedures. I don't, maybe if we can just look at that to make sure we don't run into.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because we were just at the high school and Steve Murray, the principal, was saying he heard like a news article
Yeah.
about something happening in the district. I hadn't heard this.
Yeah.
What I will tell you is we are a district that actually signed on a team to go to an AI kind of series of workshops and have them do some work with us. The first one happens to be Friday. So Bill and I think there's 8 teachers or staff from our district are going. It's at MIT in collaboration with some kind of a learning lab that they have, taking a look at AI, its implications specifically for teaching and specifically for policy that districts should have around that. So I do think something will come of that. It's a good group. Ironically, the former Commissioner of Education, Jeff Riley, is now leading a project at MIT as part of that AI look. So they offered up, I think it was 10 or 12 districts could participate, and we agreed. So we're one of the districts that was selected to participate. So they are already going to be kind of looking at this. But I'll go and try to find out what that story was because I don't know enough about it.
It involved a
See
student
how it came
and
up.
student work, and they called it plagiarism. They said there was no it was very confusing.
Whether there was a clear policy on
Right.
whether it was essentially banned for students to use assistive technology
Right,
through
and it
AI.
didn't get into what he did.
But it's not even clear yet whether using AI really is plagiarism, because it depends where you get the information you put
Depends.
into it.
Depends on how you use it,
And how
too.
you.
Yeah,
Right,
how you
it's
use
how
it
you use it,
after.
right? They didn't say how he was using
If you
it.
use something you plagiarized and put into it just to
Right.
improve it, then clearly it's plagiarism. But if it's all your own questions, then clearly it's,
Well, these are all
Definitely
factors
something
we
for us to think
probably
about,
need to
'cause
weigh.
obviously
absolutely.
I mean, I
Yeah.
think in general, I would say I have a pretty strong interest in exploring our policies on technology in general. Hearing, some early responses from community members I've reached out to, there's a lot of interest in exploring whether we want to have a more, a policy around cell phone use, social media, and things like that. So I'm not saying I have a particular stance yet, but I do think that AI falls in a similar conversation as we explore where we may have gaps in our policies.
Great. Anybody else?
I'm really reading a really good book on that. It's written by the Khan Academy founder.
Yeah?
If you're interested at all, it's a really good book about the use of AI as really an interventionist tool for students to improve performance. And he believes deeply in the Socratic method of bringing that technology into the classroom and to help students. So it's just an interesting read.
It is the next level, right? So teachers are learning how to use AI, but then the teachers are gonna have to learn how to integrate it for the students to use AI. It's just, that's the, the progression we're in right now. You know,
Yes,
that's-
yes.
I just learned how to spell it, never mind use it. All right, anybody else? Okay, I don't see any public comments, we didn't get any emails, so we'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. All right, thank you.
But I thought he was gonna come off in that